Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the 92nd Street Y, to the two of you. Let's start with a clip from the movie.
Okay.
Just when you think you've seen and heard every story about the Holocaust, this is an amazing story. Congratulations on the film. Beth, is there kind of a period in your life early on where there's this notion of, wait, there's a story behind my family's history. I'm hearing it in bits and pieces. And then maybe later on, an idea of it should be a story that should be told beyond these walls.
Definitely there is. And before I answer your question, I just really want to thank Jacob Nurek here at the 92nd Street Y. Rachel is here who introduced us. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you very much, Rachel. And it's really cool how the world kind of comes full circle. I'm here really because of this wonderful man, Adi Eshman, who's over here also working for the 92nd Street Y. But he and I met at the House of Tolerance Film Festival in Ljubljana, Slovenia, which is in the only Jewish cultural center in the entire country of Slovenia. So we were both screening our films at that festival. So thank you, Adi, for making all of this happen. I was 6 years old when I learned that my mom was adopted. And that's the same age that she was when she came to America. And of course, as a 6-year-old, my first question was, well, why were you adopted? Didn't your mommy want you? So she explained a little bit, but not a lot of it. And I did learn at that moment, not that she was a Holocaust survivor, but that she had 6 other siblings. And I was told I would never, ever, ever meet them. So I think when you're 6 years old and somebody tells you no, you want it a lot more than if somebody actually told you yes. And it became one of these things in the back of my mind always that I was curious about and would fantasize about. I remember going to Israel with my youth group in high school, and there was a woman in the Ben Gurion airport who was barefoot, and she had my mother's feet. Like she really, I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's my mom's sister. So I would have kind of fantasies like that. The day that I decided to make the film was in 2017. I never felt it was my story to tell. And in some ways, my mother never really walked into her own story. I think she felt that as the youngest, she didn't have very many memories. And what was she going to really talk about with no memories? She also felt that because she didn't have a tattoo and wasn't in a concentration camp, she was a hidden child, she didn't feel that she had the right to actually call herself persecuted or even a refugee. And of course, she was both. So in 2017, we went back to Germany and we went back to the town of Worin where they were hidden. And the town historians who were hosting us had a surprise for us. They invited a descendant of our hero in the film, Arthur Schmidt, and his wife Paula, who hid them. The historians invited a descendant of Arthur Schmidt to come and meet us.
Before that trip, is there a first conversation with your mom of, I'm going to do this?
No. It really happened in that moment of meeting this descendant. And when I met him, my brother wasn't able to join us on the trip. My sister came, my father came, and my brother wasn't able to join us. And this man was the same age as my brother. So it was kind of like a surrogate having him there. And he told me a story about his life that moved me so much that I said, I made a sacred vow to myself, which actually, when I think about that right now here in this room with all of you, here in New York City on Kristallnacht, I'm so grateful that I made that vow to myself to make a film and not stop until it was finished.
Was it a tough sell to your mom and to the whole family?
It was not so much a tough sell to my mom. First of all, my mom knows that when I make a decision to do something, like just get out of the way, don't even bother trying to talk her out of it. But not every family member wanted to be interviewed. And so I respected their decisions. But overall, I think most of my cousins were also very curious because my entire family, not just my mother, but my entire family never really talked about it. It wasn't a hidden secret in our family, but it just wasn't the conversation. And And it wasn't commemorated in a way that I think many survivor families do to commemorate. When you see the film, which you can see on Netflix and Apple, Amazon, Fandango, Google, and YouTube, you will see the whole family together and some of the discoveries that happen along the way. Yeah.
Christine, what was your entree into the film?
Well, I'm Beth's friend. And we've been friends since college. And so when she starts a project, many times she will call me and say, hey, can you help me with this? And this was exactly what happened. She called me and said, I've got to do this thing. I need your help. And what do you do when your friend says that they need your help? You just go, yeah, what can I do?
I don't think I'm sorry. No, she's not my friend. This is my ride or die, you guys. Do you all know that expression, ride or die? This is my ride or die. Christine and I met at the University of Michigan, and we were both in a directing class. And the professor wouldn't call on us.
We were the only 2 women in the class, just so you know. And the teacher didn't call on us. And after the second class, the 2 of us were exiting the classroom. And I looked at her and I said, you see me raising my hand, right? And she said, oh, yeah, I see you. And that was it. That was it. We became best friends.
Yes. And so we became roommates, and we raised our children together. And so there's a very, very long history, which I think also creates an extraordinary amount of trust and shorthand when you're actually handing your archives over to somebody and trusting them with, okay, now what do we do with all of this material and data? And Christine is just brilliant at that. I'll do a little teeny. Christine is also the chief archivist for Dick Cavett. So, I think I'm in pretty good company.
It's another thing where someone just asked me to help. I mean, I don't know how these things happen.
So is there a way to compare work on this project compared to the work that you've done on many other things?
Well, this was much more of a creative experience. Okay. And I will say this, when Beth and I started working on this project, let's not discuss all the other little things we've done along the way. It's nice to have someone there who is going to ask the questions. Because as information comes to I could say things like, well, wait a minute. I don't understand. This happened and this happened. When did exactly this happen? And what are the events that make that clear? And that's what she's talking about when she says shorthand, because only your friend can. You get past that initial, like, am I saying this the right way? We don't have that. We just say it to each other. And that makes for a great creative experience.
Let's go to our second clip of the movie. The movie is rich in archival footage and archival pictures. They're the lifeblood of these types of documentaries. And this clip has to do with archives. A couple of things. First of all, that's an incredibly powerful moment. If you haven't seen the film, there are more than your fair share of powerful moments in the film, as in all of them. But something tangible, the picture, the document, and your reaction. Is there thought going into these moments when you're there? You're not back in here in New York or in California, but you're there. Did you think it through beforehand in terms of, I need to look at this as a documentarian, or I need to look at this as a member of the family, put emotion in, keep emotion out? Is it thought of beforehand, or are you just going into it like, I'm going to react how I'm going to react?
I went into it quite literally, I'm going to react how I'm going to react. I've very intentionally wanted to capture me discovering things for the very first time. So I had no idea what I was walking into. And it's funny, after we shot this scene, the archivist said to me, Beth, I'm so sorry. Like, she brought me a box of Kleenex, because I think what you see here is just kind of the beginning of my reaction. I don't remember really exactly what happened after that, but I think I probably got even more emotional. And she brought me a box of Kleenex, and she said, I sent you the files via email so you'd know what you were walking into. And I said, I know, I didn't look at them. That's the whole, when we make movies, the reason we love going to the movies is we all want to be transported. We all want to have not an emotion. We want to have some sense of community or feeling or something that moves us that we don't normally get to feel on an everyday basis. And so I wanted to really make sure that I created that for myself, and not just visually, but orally as well, because our soundscape throughout the entire film is also archival. Our sound designers really brought in old sounds and like broken recorded tape and audio of what things actually sounded like when we were in Oranienburg, hearing the boots walking. And those are from old archival audio libraries. They're not something new. And of course we had Foley, which is when you actually make the sounds of people walking or dropping a pen or things like that. But we made sure that all of that was really as authentic as possible.
What comes through in the film is all these different siblings, and they have different personalities. And the sister who talks about you don't come out of that experience that we just saw in the clip, you don't come out of that experience the same, and he was broken. She is a personality that stands out. But in terms of different personalities, it's all part of one family, but is the approach to getting them to talk and getting, for want of a better term, meaningful thoughts out of them, is it a different approach with each one?
Absolutely, most definitely. They have such distinct personalities, and the way that I would talk to my mom, for example, we play Scrabble in the film. I'm doing her hair in the film. My mother is a very elegant woman, and she's a beautiful speaker and a choreographer. And so when you just try and film her, she's performative, and she doesn't mean to be. So I had to do a little interruptus with Mom. That's why we did activities like playing Scrabble and stuff like that.
Could have been a much longer film.
Yes, definitely. Now, Aunt Ruth, for example, when we went to her house, she came outside and opened the door and she launched into a story like that. And it's like, Aunt Ruth, I have to mic you up. Like, don't tell the story. Wait. Aunt Gertrude, we were making noodle together. And Aunt Renee, I think, was the hardest one to get her to talk. And that all happened through Homentashen on Purim. Yep.
If all else fails, go to food. I think the great documentarians have always used noodle kugel as a vehicle. So Christine, paint a picture for us in terms of the process. Are you getting all of this archival footage and photos like coming in left and right? Or are there moments of, you know that something's out there that you haven't gotten your hands on yet? And boy, if we could get our hands on this, that would be great.
So I think there's a little difference between archiving and being a historian, right? And one of the brilliant things that Beth did was find historian and researchers in some of these different countries that really helped us gather information. Also, I will tell you, different editors that worked on this film, if you are an editor for documentaries, you know how to source archival footage. So they would come to the table with several different clips for Beth to see and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And as the director, she would say something like this, or let's look more. And so my job was mainly, it was very exciting because we would be discovering things all along the way. We would get on a Zoom with someone in Germany who was finding, and he would be more excited than we were. He would, look what I found. And that was the Zoom. And then we would be like, oh my gosh. And so then it would be getting the scan of that and tagging it, archiving it, or organizing it in such a way that it can be accessible to the entire team of editors, of the director, of the storytellers.
Like anything great, it's always a team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
That notion, at the risk of asking an obvious question, what does it feel like when something falls in your lap? Mm-hmm. Something great that when, like you say, someone from across the pond says, oh, by the way, I found X. Would you guys be interested in this?
Margaritas were shared. Let's just say that. Okay. There were days that we worked 12 hours and then we would just look at each other. It's California. So she would say, let's go. We'll go and have a margarita, sitting, watching, looking at the beach. And we literally would walk into the restaurant and say, we're not staying. but we want to sit right by the beach. We'll be here for 45 minutes, one margarita. And they would let us. And it was nice. It was those celebrations when you're working on something over a long period of time. And Beth, how many years?
I started in 2017.
Right. When you work on a project for that long, you have to take those times to celebrate those moments and those discoveries because it energizes you to move forward.
How do the margaritas go with the noodle kugel? It's an interesting combination.
No, we were watching our calories, so just the margaritas.
On the flip side, did you know of anything, footage or photographs, that were out there that I've heard about this, or one of my aunts says this exists, that took a while to find?
Well, the what we call the hero shot in the film that you saw at the very top of the clip today, when you see all 7 of the siblings in that grouping in the black and white footage, that is owned by Getty Images. And it is that the still of that footage hangs in the last gallery of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And that was discovered by my uncle Alphonse in 1994 when the museum opened. And he starts at the top, as you do, and you wind your way down to the bottom. And he came face to face with a photograph of himself. So that was our first discovery of that photograph, really decades later. I'm sure they saw it back in the 40s when it was printed because they were on the cover of every newspaper. But that footage, we didn't know about the footage until that wonderful film, The Long Way Home by Mark Harris, edited by Kate Ament, was released. And my mother was in a movie theater and saw the clip and screamed. She saw herself on the screen in a movie theater. So we knew that that's what we had to start with. And then everything kind of.
And that was the clue. So we did a lot of newspaper research.
Yes.
We dove into newspaper archives, and it was so fascinating how the entire country was captivated with the arrival of these children. Not just Beth's family, but the entire Kinder boat that arrived with all these children. It was something that was nationwide. That was interesting.
One of the most powerful parts of the film, and a hugely important part of the film, and I'm not giving anything away if you haven't seen the film yet, but I highly recommend that you do see the film, is the notion that they were hid on a farm. And so the notion of that and how that came about, how did you come upon that story?
That's a story that they've told me, and so we've always known about that. I think we talk about that really well in the film, so I'm not going to answer that too specifically here right now. What I do want to highlight in seeing, it's fun for me to actually see these clips out of context of the film. You know, I usually see the whole film at this point, and the way that we brought the archives to life graphically in an animated way, I feel that when I'm showing the film to audiences, and especially younger generations, they stay captivated with the story because it's not a history lesson. And they're following the graphic sequences, and they're staying engaged with all of it. And I got to work with some really incredible people on the graphics team who were able to realize that vision. Even with at the top of the film, when you see that handwriting, that's my uncle's handwriting. Those are his letters that he wrote to me. And seeing that stuff kind of really jump off the page. So the work that we're doing in spreadsheets and files and all that stuff, and then to actually make it cinematic, is something that I think really speaks to this idea of l'adore vador. Because how do you pass these stories on to the next generation and not have it be kind of a dry, boring, exercise?
Not only dry and boring, but also you need to remember this because...
Kids don't want that.
No. In a couple of minutes, we'll be taking your questions, which I believe are on pieces of paper. L'adore vador, we could spend a whole weekend talking about the whole notion of l'adore vador from generation to generation, and young people, and the notion of people who put themselves out and put themselves in danger to, without going into the story nuts and bolts here, because it's in the film, who put themselves in danger to ensure the safety of these siblings, and the notion of saying to a 15-year-old right now, or a 17-year-old, would you do that? And that leads to one of the most captivating scenes in the movie in the next clip. A couple of things. First of all, sometimes the best response after a compelling moment in an interview, and I've learned this through experience, is silence. And so to see the young man say, I'm a refugee, and then put his head down, we don't need anyone to explain what that moment means. And as you're doing the film, is there a sense during these moments, over in Europe, interviewing your family here, do you know when you have something captivating right in that moment? Or do you only kind of know it after going back and looking at the film that you've shot that day?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before, Bud. I think sometimes we think we know it. And I certainly know when there's been an extraordinary connection or moment with the person that is right there and we're experiencing the same thing together. But in terms of, is it going to land in the film or not? I have no idea. And there's so much that happens between filming and editing and then post-production that it's impossible to really know. And even when I think, oh yeah, that's the one, and it winds up not being the one, or vice versa. There was one day when I really thought I needed a specific thing, and we were doing a pickup shot. That's when you're done filming, you go edit, and then you have to grab a few more shots. And so we were in my mom's apartment, and I was prodding her to answer a question. And the next thing I know, she's just in tears. And then next thing I know, I'm just like, Beth, what have you done? I'm like, oh my gosh, my poor mother. And we wound up using none of it. And it's stunning footage. And we didn't use any of it. So it's just hard to know.
Are there judgment calls for both of you? Are there judgment calls all along the way of maybe a piece that you thought initially, oh, this is definitely going to be in the film?
Well, there's so many versions of a movie. Okay, that's something I learned on this journey. And it's like anything, you fall in love with pieces, and then another edit comes through and they disappear, and you're like, oh, really missed that piece. But it wasn't really adding to the story that we were trying to tell. And so I think that there's that. And there is, you know, what I refer to as an Italian is, you know, spaghetti against the wall. I mean, you throw the spaghetti against the wall and you see if it sticks. And I think that Beth was so brave with that. When she was traveling, she had this itinerary of following the path that these children followed. And her walking up to those kids, we thought it was just going to be a little part of that movie, and yet everybody responded so strongly to that. And that whole question of, would you hide me, and us here now watching history repeat itself. So that's the stuff.
One part I love about that scene, it's like a couple of the kids look, and I'm sure they wouldn't make this reference, but a couple of kids initially look like, of all the benches in all the world that we had to sit on today, you know. But it's a beautiful part of the film.
Thank you.
A couple of questions from the audience, from you. Christine, you described the work on the documentary as a creative experience. Can you elaborate how working on projects steeped in history and research, I'm having a hard time reading this, where that is fueled by creativity?
Oh, come on. History is so interesting. And by the way, I hated history when I was growing up, but it is just fascinating. And I think when it's personal, it's even more fascinating. Like, you know what the outline is, you know what you've been taught in school or what you've read in a book. But then when someone personalizes it, I mean, to take the very basic, you know, most accessible example of that, the Diary of Anne Frank, right? I mean, that's just a book. that a girl wrote her thoughts in, but in the context of everything that happened. And then you go back to someone's personal experience. We saw the Hannah Senish play last night. Again, it's the personal experience that makes it so exciting. And then sort of making the plans. It's like we're planning this trip that she went on with this crew. And then all along the way, it's the 2000s. So she's like, she's texting me, or we get on a FaceTime, and those discoveries, they not only are fueling your creativity, but they also make you feel a part of the creative process, even if you aren't right there with your hands on.
Another question. What filming location was the farthest or most out of the way?
Probably Indersdorf, I think. I suppose going to Israel is farther away than going to Germany, but Indersdorf was a good 8 hours south of Berlin, and had never been to Indersdorf before. And it seemed the most travel loggy to get there. And we had our van in Berlin, and then we, really took a wonderful route to get all the way down there. And the discoveries that we made in Indersdorf were so interesting and so beautiful.
Such as?
Going to the cloister where the family was sent after liberation. There was a journey to get out. The first half of the film is during the war, but the second half of the film is actually getting out and getting to America. And getting out of Germany is a whole story in and of itself. So actually going to one of the places that provided extraordinary harbor, safe harbor, not in hiding, that was very profound. And I'm so grateful that we had that experience. And this is really, really crazy, you guys. When we were at Yad Vashem, that was our first principal photography. Began at Yad Vashem in the Gardens of the Righteous, honoring Arthur and Paula Schmidt on the granite walls. And there was a ton of press. Now, the Gardens of the Righteous at this point, I think, was about 27 years old when we had that ceremony. And I turned to Irina Steinfeld, who was the director of the program at the time, and I said, do you always have this much press? After 27 years of doing these incredible ceremonies. She said, no, we don't. But because this is a German story, a German family, it's quite notable. And Arthur and Paula Schmidt are the 600th names of the 27,000 names. So that's not a lot of German names in there. So the press comes, it's published in Germany, and somebody in Germany reads an article and says to her girlfriend, gee, I think you wrote about this family in one of your books. And that woman, Anna Ansdorf, who is in the film, contacted us, or found a way to contact us. And it turns out that our family is talked about, not by name, but by size and group and age. And we're in a bunch of books. So that happened in Indersdorf in the 40s. And then it kind of really came full circle. So things like that are, for me, why I do feel so deeply that archival research itself is a form of activism. It's a way to stay engaged with the past and bring it forward so that we can continue to walk in a world as the upstanders that we wish to be.
Speaking of coming to America, our final clip from the movie is all about coming to America. Let's take a look.
Amazing.
Another question from the audience. Beth, now that you have seen your dream come into fruition, what part in researching or creating this film most surprised?
Let me think about that one. What most surprised me. Okay, this is not the answer you're expecting. We launched on Netflix on Yom HaShoah. Netflix is an amazing company. They're very collaborative. And as a first-time indie filmmaker, it was amazing to me that they were willing to listen to my ideas. I knew we had a good film, but they let me pick Yom HaShoah. And the next morning I had to fly to Dallas, and I was in the lounge waiting for my flight. And I opened up my computer, And I just was like, okay, well, I'll go on Netflix. And all of a sudden I see that we're in the top 10 films of the US and we're ranked number 5. And I screamed in the lounge. And the man next to me said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm really, really good."
Screaming in the airport usually is not a problem.
Good idea. But I answered that question, and I know it's probably not the archival answer, but it did surprise me. This film has never been made to hit these milestones at all. It was made as a love letter to my uncle Alphonse. This was the trip he and I planned on going on together, and then he died. So this film was made for my children. That's it. That's it. And I think that what's happened to us right now has been, I'm so humbled by it. I'm so moved that people are responding to it the way that you're all responding to it. We're getting an award a week from Tuesday. We're in all kinds of awards campaigns right now. We had over 1.5 million streams in August. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me. And so I think that the response, honestly, is my honest answer of what surprised me the most. And you guys, we're going for it. We're going for the Academy Award. So if you have friends that are in the Academy, I can't tell them to watch it. I can't tell them to vote. That's against the rules. But you can.
I've done a lot of events here at the 92nd Street Y. That's probably the first time I've ever heard, if you have friends in the Academy. Excellent. Last couple of questions from the audience. In terms of response, what do non-Jews ask you about the film Unbroken? I don't know.
Well, first I want to just mention, like, it's the accessibility of this story, too. It is not your typical, this is the history, this happened in this year, and then this happened in this year, and then this happened. And I know Beth and I, our children are all the same generation, and it was very much in her mind to make this accessible to everyone. And in fact, from the very beginning, we talked about having an educational component to building this story. And so I think, as I am a non-Jew, although I'm very artistically involved in a lot of Jewish stories, so I'm giving that some thought.
You're married to a Jewish man. I'm married to a Presbyterian man.
That's right. And his grandmother said I was the best of all of them. But I will say that, you know, I think that I think your beliefs are part of your history. And what's nice about this film is that it's a family story. It is a story of this family. And you learn about our kids are being raised in a generation where chutzpah is a good thing, sometimes a little too much of a good thing, right? And these siblings have a lot of chutzpah, at least one or two, enough to get the other 5 along. And that is inspiring. It doesn't matter what the religion is. It doesn't matter what the trauma is. And there is trauma, right? And if you have children or grandchildren, you know that that's all they talk about is whatever their trauma is and how they're going to overcome it. But it does make it accessible. And it does make it a story that it doesn't matter what your religion is. You're going to relate to this family.
The great writer, absolutely. The great writer, Gates Leese, once told me in an interview, I've been blessed to do several of them with him, including here on stage at the Y, and he said, from Italian immigrants, the son of Italian immigrants, and he said, the people who came here, and to this day, they had to be a little bit crazy, and they had to be fighters, because they came from different situations, but, you know, they all kind of looked at it like, okay, we could play it safe and be here, although in this case, not so playing it safe. But there's something about that generation that came here, whatever the circumstances were, and the shoulders that we stand on are to be honored every single day. Last thing, and that is the response of the siblings to the film.
They've all had very different responses. They're so grateful that their story is being told. They never felt the need to tell it. But I think my mother in particular, now that it is out there in such a public way, she's she's embraced her own story. There was even an afternoon where she apologized to me for never giving me my legacy as a child, to which, of course, I responded saying, Mom, that's okay. We're figuring this out together. But it's really been beautiful seeing my Aunt Judy in Dallas watch the film in a cinema. I think it was at a Regal or an AMC. They've really embraced it. They've really, really embraced it. And I think that the children, as a matter of fact, do we have any survivors here today? Do we have any second generation survivors? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. How about third generation survivors? Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you for coming. And I think it's the generations too that are so important. And how lucky am I that I actually happen to have one thing to say to those kids in the courtyard. And that is, hey, do you know Marlon Craft? Well, how on earth would I know the name Marlon Craft? It's the one and only rapper that I know. Why do I know Marlon Craft? That's Christine's son.
My son.
It's Bashert.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
yes.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, if this is going to be a bit of a stretch, but it reminds me when I covered sports for many, many years, and there's an expression in baseball, they're all line drives in the box score. Namely, back in the days when you had box scores in the newspaper, which is, before they invented fire, apparently, you could see somebody got a hit. Under hits, it would say one. It didn't describe what kind of hit, whether it was a bloop off the end of the bat or off the wall. All line drives in the box score. So this one rapper. So to them, this woman's like, they think like, wow, this woman is pretty hip.
That's always the bravery in the moment. Okay, like how many filmmakers I see a bunch of teens sitting over there. What could I talk to them about? Okay, I know what I'm going to say. And then she walks over, and it happens, and it becomes like a pivotal thing because it's relatable, it's real. And then the discovery of that child who was a refugee. I mean, it was just put there for you. Shoo.
It's true.
Yes.
Well, as the grandson of a man who came here in 1912 by himself from Suwałki, Poland, when he was 14, because he saw the old world, and he thought, I don't know what the new world is, but it can't be worse than the old world. But most of his family stayed behind. There were letters through the teens and 20s and 30s, and then they stopped after 1939. I think a nephew got out after the war and confirmed what my grandfather already knew. And then my father, who fought in Europe in 44 and 45, and his unit helped liberate Nordhausen, one of the smaller camps. The film is incredibly meaningful. And at a time, even I had a split second of, I think we've heard all the Holocaust stories. And then you realize, oh my gosh, we've only heard a drop in the bucket. And namely this generation, the generation came over, those who survived, and some didn't want to talk about it forever. Some did. That's different personalities. This is a beautiful film. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you watch it on Netflix or many places where you can stream it. There's tons of information if you'll join us over in the corner after our conversation. And this has been a real
Product launch.
Product launch. Mention it one more time.
I have a couple things, guys. Over there are, please give us your name and your email so we can stay in touch. Please, please, please. And there are tons of postcards. Take as many as you want. Pass them out. Put them in a coffee shop. Just spread the word. We could actually spike again today. If you leave here and email or text 7 people to ask them to watch today and ask them to also text 7 people, we could spike. Wouldn't that be fun? And then there are brochures.
Margaritas for all.
Yes. And there are brochures that really talk about our awards campaign as well as all of our educational initiatives, which are launching in January on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So we need a lot of support. The Weber Family Arts Foundation is committed to combating anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate through the arts by sharing stories of hope. And that's how UnBroken, it's the inaugural project. We are selling a very, very limited edition of DVDs. They're not $18, they're $180. So if you're interested in that, you can let me know. And look what I'm wearing. Oh my goodness. This is launching today. Lingua Franca is making cashmere sweaters and cotton sweaters, and you get to pick your color of sweater, you get to pick your embroidery thread, and you can choose between the phrase unbroken or would you hide me. The men, you can actually get the men cotton in extra large, and it looks terrific on men also. And Lingua Franca is donating 20% of the proceeds to the Weber Family Arts Foundation, and I'm so, so grateful to them. And I'm grateful to you, Christine, for being here. I'm grateful to you, Budd, for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really, really grateful. And all of you, thank you for coming to the 90 Second Street Y.